Our guest presenter this morning is Tony Healy. Now, Tony's I've known for a long time. He particularly was a very close friend of my youngest brother. He ran a very successful engineering business. He's a very keen traveller, as we'll find out this morning. He's also very keen on Morris cars and has got a superbly restored Morris Cowley motor vehicle, which is a pride and joy. And he's also rebuilding another. He's getting close to completion.
15/16.
Okay, we might talk a little bit about that. But apart from cars, Tony is very keen on train journeys, and he's going to tell us about the train journey that he and his wife Helen did recently across Switzerland, which is absolutely spectacular. And I think this is the second time that he's done it. That it was so good the first time that Tony's decided they'd do it again. So it's that rail journey that he's going to talk about to us this morning, and aided by some pictures that he took along the way. So Tony, thank you for coming. Love to see you, and particularly love to hear about and see your rail journey in Switzerland.
Thank you, David. Before I start, in this folder there's some blurb from the railways in Switzerland that we travelled on. So I'll just pass that on. And also in there we were preempted by the Age last Saturday. They ran a 3-page blurb in their travel guide about just the tour that we had taken twice. We took this tour first in 2019, and we took it because we saw it advertised. It was run by Webjet, and I've got to say the thing that appealed to us first was that it was as cheap as chips, and we liked it so much that both of us said that as soon as we got home, we said we could happily go back and do it again straight away. It was really good. As David introduced me, I'm keen on things engineering and mechanical. I've been involved in engineering all my working life. So my interest in the tour, as well as the beautiful scenery and what have you, is in the mechanicals of the trains and the civil engineering involved in the construction of the rails and so forth. Prior to starting on taking the first one, like most of us, we'd seen some of the famous rail journeys on TV programs. So that was probably the initial prompt that sort of got us going. The tour that we did this year was organised through Swiss Travel, who did a marvellous job. We started the inquiry with saying we wanted to go here and here and here and here and here and here, and how many days we wished to spend in each place. and they organised all the train journeys, hotels, and in their organisation of the train journeys, for each train journey place to place, when we got their feedback, they had a selection of train times there and back and so forth, and you picked the one that suited you on the day, and so it was really well organised. The hotels they chose were all, with maybe one exception, were all excellent. Just wonderful hotels, good breakfast every morning, and all of them were close to the railway stations. The furthest we had to walk was about 700 metres, and a couple that were further away than that, the hotels supplied shuttle buses carting us back and forth. So it was very easy, and the things that, or the famous trains that we travelled on, the Gothard Panorama Express, and this line was opened in 1880. And when you look at the construction and so forth, you wonder how they did it at the time, but it was all pick and shovel, explosives, and very hard work, obviously. And the Bernini, that goes from Zurich to Lucerne to Lugano. And the next one is the Bernina Express, which runs from Lugano to St. Moritz. And then probably the most famous one, and everyone's heard of this one, the Glacier Express, which runs from St. Moritz to Zermatt, and it's a 7.5 hour rail journey. And from Zermatt to Montreux and Interlaken, the Golden Pass Express is another famous one, and the two offshoot rail journeys that probably are most interesting was the Jungfrau Bahn, which goes from Interlaken to Jungfraujoch, and Jungfraujoch is the highest railway station in Europe. And the other from Zermatt to Gornegrat, the Jungfraubahn opened in 1912, and from Zermatt to Gornegrat, when Gornegrat's at the base of the Matterhorn, that opened in 1907, and it's in, all of these are in almost impossible country to construct anything in. In fact, when we were in Zermatt, we were fascinated. There was a helicopter flying around, carting some, what we finally found out later, were building materials hanging off the belly of the helicopter. And they were carting these building materials to a building site up on the mountain that was inaccessible by any other way. Now the cities visited on this one, we started in Zurich. Zurich's the largest city in Switzerland, the financial centre of Switzerland. Of course, we've all heard of the gnomes of Zurich, all the famous bankers and so forth, and it's also the largest railway hub in Switzerland. When you go into the station, the old building's really beautiful, and when you get in there, all of a sudden there's all these escalators and elevators going everywhere. The railway station they built under the old railway station, it's now 4 levels deep. And Zurich to Lucerne. Lucerne's a beautiful old city, probably for most people they'd say it's the nicest old city in Switzerland, built around Lake Lucerne. Fabulous country. There's some famous things in Lucerne. There's a wooden bridge walkway that runs over the end of the lake, and all of the arches on this wooden walkway have got beautiful paintings of local events and so forth on them. From Lucerne, the next was not really a stop, because we only saw it from the train and from the boat. Fluellen is at the other end of Lake Lucerne, and on one journey we travelled to Fluellen and then on the ferry to Lucerne, whereas this most recent one we didn't do that, we just travelled on the train. And Lugano is in the Ticino, the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland, and it's typical as it's because of the steepness of the valleys. Lots of these towns on the lakes are very steep, and at Lugano, the town steps down to the lake, but from the upper level of where we were staying, which is nearly at the top of the hill, there's a funicular that goes down to the middle of town. The next stop was Tirano, and Tirano was on the Italian-Swiss border, and again it's one of those, it's a transfer point. We only spend a couple of hours there, so know little about it. The interesting part is from both times we were there, the train from Tirano wasn't running, so there was a bus, so we missed out on some of the train journey. But the interesting part was that the bus went through Italy for a small part of I don't know how far, just only a few miles of the journey, but the Italian border police were all told to get our passports out, and the Italian border police walked through the bus, had a look around, didn't look at anyone's passports, and they got off at the next stop and must have gone back. And Lugano to San Moritz is another beautiful train journey. And probably the most famous one, the Glacier Express, from San Moritz to Zermatt. And it travels through a wide range of countries, and occasionally the train's perched, cut into the mountainside above the valley below. Other times you're actually in the valley, and occasionally in the valley there'll be the railway line, the road next to the railway, and the river. And then they climb out. But Zermatt, our favourite spot in Switzerland, if you could dream of a Swiss ski town, it'd be Zermatt. All of the buildings, probably the tallest is 2 or 3 stories, and they're built very much like the old houses were built there back in the eons. There's a small part of Zermatt where they've preserved some of these old buildings that were built in the 16th and 17th century. And apart from the fact that they're having a hard time propping them up these days, the design of them and so forth is horribly like the buildings that are being built now. And of course Zermatt's famous because it's the jump off point for the Matterhorn, and the town's very much into honouring the people who've climbed the Matterhorn, and particularly the ones who didn't come back. In the graveyard in the town and in the churchyard there are lots of graves of people who died on the Matterhorn, and memorial plaques or gravestones without graves to other people who died on the Matterhorn. Often they're decorated with climbing gear. And the interesting part is as you walk down the street in Zermatt, there are bronze plaques set in the pavement reminding us of the people who died on the Matterhorn, and it's very interesting to read them. I think the youngest person who died on the Matterhorn was 15 years old, and the oldest was 81. Now, talking about the trains themselves, being typically Swiss, they're on time. If the train's going to leave at 1:01, leaves at 1:01, not 1:01 and 1 second. If you're 1 second late, you don't get on. And the trains are all clean and tidy, and I'm sure our railways have a lot to learn from them. And I'm fascinated with the mechanics of them, because the Gornergrat rail and the Jungfraujoch rail they're rack rails. The gradients are all too steep to get traction, a steel wheel to steel rail. And the engine or the electric motors on the train drive a gear which engages with a rack that's set between the tracks, and the tracks are only about 2 feet wide. They're all very narrow gauge. And the interesting bit for me was that there were two different sorts of racks. There was racks with single cut teeth and racks with offset teeth, and they're all a pair of racks a few inches apart on a central rail. And it turns out that in thinking about it and asking the question, the offset one is used in some places where the trains go a bit faster because they're much quieter. Now, if you'd like to start scrolling through them, thanks, Bruce. Sorry, too long?
No. I'll tell a little story afterwards.
Okay.
Oh, that's the second one. Sorry.
Yeah, if you just like to scroll through, this is
That's
a village near Interlaken where we stayed on the previous time, because the pub in Interlaken was full, or one of the pub we were supposed to stay in was full, and it was a beautiful little village. And if you scroll through them, this was the day we arrived, and it was a quite clear day, as you can see. And when we woke up in the morning, the place was absolutely covered in snow.
Next.
Just get popping.
Freezing cold.
Even you feel.
That's the bridge.
No, that isn't the bridge in Lucerne. That's a bridge just out of the little town where we stayed, and it's reputed to be over 200 years old. And there's and the only place in it where there's any metal is where they've repaired it. The rest of it's all timber with wedges and dowels and that's the town we're talking about. It's Wildersville. And that sorry.
Want to go back?
No, that's okay. You see the two lakes there with the land, bit of land between them. That's Interlaken. And Interlaken's in two parts, the east and the west, and they're about 4 minutes apart by train. Oh.
I can't hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, they said the two halves of Interlaken, the east and the west, are about 4 minutes apart by train, and the trains run about every 10 minutes. Most of these are actually photos taken from the train as you travel along, so you get an idea of how high up above the bottom of the valleys you are, and how cold it is. This is that's the rack of the rack railways. Yeah. We're getting a bit higher up here.
68 feet.
Mustn't have been very cold there. She's taken her coat off. A wooden frame. Wow.
Climb that one.
Would you like to climb that one?
No,
And you can see there at the top of that horrible ladder, that mesh you can see, that's to contain the rock face to try to prevent avalanches. The bottom you can just see the top of a building. That's a building that's alongside the rail line. So you can see why they don't want rocks flying down.
don't go there in the winter time.
Well, actually, this wasn't winter. This was in May, and we were there again this year in May, and it was a lot warmer than it was when we went in 2019.
Climate change.
There's obvious climate change involved, but apparently they do have a fair variety as far as the start and stop of the seasons. We were sort of wondering about some of these towns perched in the bottom of these lovely valleys where there's very little flat ground. You wonder what all the people do for a living there. we did talk to some farmers on the train, this time of a group of young farmers, I'm saying young 30, 40-year-olds, we were talking to, and they were on a boys' outing, which they do every year, and they were telling us that where they farm, the average farm is only 33 hectares, and they run dairy cows and pigs. And of course, during the winter, they're all barned. Oh, there's a sideways town.
Healy.
Some of these photos have got mixed up on it because that's way back in the eons. That was the morning after in the little town where it had snowed very quietly overnight. We were, and this was taken from the Glacier Express, and as you go along, quite often in these valleys you can see from the train, because you're a fair way above the bottom of the valley, you can sometimes see 2 or 3 little hamlets, and they all seem to have a church that looks almost exactly like that one.
Now a hot shower.
That's the thought of it.
Beautiful place.
Another thing that we noticed, and you'll probably see some of it in some of these photos, was that, well, all of the trains are electric, and of course Switzerland's well known for its hydropower, and in lots of places where a valley meets another valley or something, there's lots of relatively small hydropower stations, obviously just supplying the local area. Here we are in Zermatt, our favourite place and David's favourite place too, in Switzerland. And that pointy mountain you can see there at the end of the street is the Matterhorn. It's not the tallest mountain in the area. There's a couple that are taller than it, but it's famous because it's a very technical and difficult climb.
There it is. There it is. It's hard to climb that.
With difficulty.
With difficulty.
Yeah. That's why it's a challenge.
Good photos on here.
And this was, I was walking on our second morning in Zermatt, and it had rained overnight, and all of those icicles had formed just overnight.
Is that cold?
Cool.
Very cold. Now this current group of photos are on the Gornagrup Railway from Zermatt up to the base of the Matterhorn at Gornagrup.
It's a good one, Tara.
Yeah, that's
Very good, that one. Someone's chiseling.
Anybody's trying to climb.
Yeah, I know. To do that.
it's a magnificent, the chain of mountains, of which, you know, the Matterhorn's only one, are quite spectacular.
Really spectacular. It doesn't surround. 2010.
That's the tallest I've ever been. This is the, they call it a hotel at Gornagrup. And you can see there's an observatory there. This again is from the train. And the train that runs from Zermatt to Gornagrup, it's electric of course, and it's a total rack railway, so it works very hard all the way up because they're very steep grades. And on the way back down, it uses no power at all because the motors are also dynamos, so and they act as brakes and put current back into the grid as it goes back down the hill to, or the many hills to Zermatt. And the railway stations, that's an elaborate one on this thing, but there's a few other stops along the way where they can hail the train because in the season they cart cross-country skiers to various spots along the rail and they ski back down to wherever they go to.
Need oxygen.
And these posts that you can see are graduated there. They indicate the snow depth. Well, you can see where some brave skiers have left their mark.
That's a good one. And this time when we were travelling up to Gornagrat on the train, there were a group of fellows who were hang gliding instructors, and they take people on doubles on the hang gliders from the high points, and they don't like taking people who weigh over 100 kilograms. It's too hard to take off, and you land a bit hard. Oh, this is one of the plaques in Vermont, the Lord Francis Douglas. He didn't live very long before fire, did he? You don't go sleepwalking there. As I said, some of these are out of sequence. This is the Glacier Crest. This is one of the famous stone bridges, and it's about 100 years old. And you go straight off it into a tunnel that goes straight through that mountain. They look a bit like pictures from old Christmas cards, don't they? Yeah.
Was the lake frozen, Tony?
At St. Roots, around the edges it was, David, yeah. Yeah. A mini Matterhorn. This is an interesting one.
depending on which way you're travelling, the train had to lose or gain height as it headed into the next valley. It was quite a long train, that one. It is, yeah. But you can see how far it's risen above the rail, and it struggled its way up. And you can see also on that one it emphasises how steep the grades are. And some of these trains, where it's relatively flat, drive on the wheels to the rails and engage the rack when the wheels, if the wheels start to slip, it automatically engages the rack to drive them up the steep grades. And we were about here on the train. I think it had 12 carriages. And that building we just saw was a power station. Now, do you like that one? That's a more modern version. This is Lucerne now. And these are the paintings in the wooden bridge that I spoke of earlier. Someone's about to lose their head. A part of that wooden bridge burnt a few years ago, and you can't tell now where they replaced the burnt bit. All of these shots are in Lucerne. On Lake Lucerne, all the waterfront properties are some beautiful properties, and most of them have their own boathouse that they can run their boat in off the lake, and some of them have got an elevator. They run their boat in, and the elevator picks the boat up, and they get off at the house level. This is in Lugano. You get an idea. And the city's on both sides of the lake. And I can't think of anywhere we were in Switzerland that we couldn't see some snow-covered mountains. This is the funicular at Lugano, and I can't remember how much they charged. 2 Swiss francs or 3 Swiss francs or something. The locals often didn't ride it. A lot of them, when it was busy, you'd see them, and some of them were very fit. They were running up those stairs. Now we're back in Zurich. So I think that might be if we've been going long enough, that might be a time to leave it.
Thanks, Doug.
Yeah. It was a quick trip. We just went to Milan from Zurich.
That's Milan.
Thank you. I hope that wasn't too long-winded.
Very good. And to see, yes, right there, but to see anyone want to ask Tony any questions about that terrific presentation?
Just on the lake itself, I think the office place, Riga, there was a ship, a big steamship there that's been renovated. Did you see it on the lake?
In Lucerne,
Yeah,
on Lake Lucerne, there's a number of renovated old ferries that operate at Lucerne.
probably built in the 1930s.
Yeah. There's 2 or 3 of them that were built in the 20s and 30s. I think now 2 of them are operating, and the third one, when we were there recently, was about to go into service. Yeah.
Because it just runs up and down that lake, and
Yeah.
one of the stops is Riga,
Yeah.
and that has a funicular railway running from to the top of the mountain. And Riga, the funicular railway.
Yeah, well, now, my brother and I, the girls didn't want to go home looking at shops. My brother and I, in Lucerne, jumped on the local ferry that went to various spots around the lake, and it was really lovely. It was terrific. Yeah.
All right, any Yeah, all I can say is I endorse what Tony said about Zermatt. When we first went to Switzerland, it was 1975, and I spoke to a colleague in London, and I said, we've only got a short time in Zermatt. What do you in Switzerland? What do you recommend? He said, there's just one place you've got to go to, and that's Zermatt, and it is incredible. You can't get in there by car. You only get in there by train, so there's no vehicles in the town at all. And you wake up in the morning, you look out the window, and the Matterhorn just towers above you. But the most fascinating place in Zermatt's the cemetery, and the number buried there from trying to climb the Matterhorn just seems to go on and on forever. It's just incredible. Anyway, Tony, thank you very much for sharing your experience with us. Might have inspired a few to think about the journey, but it's a fair way to go these days. But it certainly is a spectacular.
But also, I will say that the way we did it this time was not very taxing at all. You know, everything was quite comfortable. So, yeah.
It's getting there and back. It's a problem these days. Tony.
Or getting travel insurance.
Yeah, that's it. I'll give it to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah, sure.
All right, guys and ladies.
You might want that back.
That's.
Thank you.
That's about it for today. Next meeting is, I think, around about the 9th of August. Anyway, second Tuesday in August. And not sure yet what we'll be doing as far as the guest speaker, but we'll work on that. And it's just great to see so many here. And look forward to seeing you in August.